right. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to Qonnect Gov, everyone. We've got a great program for you today. My name is Lindsay Winthrop, and I'm the community manager here at Qumulo, and I'll be acting as your host for today's program. If you don't already know who Qumulo is, no worries. We'll be providing some insight here in a few minutes. And whether you're new or you've been a customer for years, make sure to listen closely. We'll put your Qumulo knowledge to the test in a fun Kahoot game later on. And that's just the start. We're thrilled to have Brandon Middleton from AWS with us here today to talk about why Qumulo and AWS are better together, followed by a demo so you can see it in action. Next, you'll hear from our very own VP of Product, Ben Gittenstein, to provide an overview of a customer use case that is truly a home run. And speaking of customers, we saved the best for last. You'll be hearing from one of our beloved customers, the University of Florida, on how they use Qumulo. Customer testimonials are my absolute favorite, and I can't wait to see what they have to say. And to finish up with some fun, we'll wrap up the program with one final round of Kahoot. Now, before we get started, we have some important things to note. First things first, please stay on mute throughout the event. While we always love to hear from you, we want to ensure that we don't miss a single word from any one of our exciting presenters. Second, we do value transparency around here, so I'm letting you all know that we will be recording all presentations throughout the day. Third, use the chat feature to ask any questions you have along the way, making sure to direct it both to panelists and attendees. And lastly, and most importantly, don't act like a grumquat, our moody mascot. Enjoy yourself and have fun. So let's dive in. To kick things off, we'll start off with Who's Qumulo, presented by Steve Knoll, a federal account manager in the Washington, D.C. metro area who's been with Qumulo for almost 6.5 years. He's known for building relationships and providing customers confidence that Qumulo solutions will deliver the outcomes they need to succeed. It's no secret that Steve is a whiz with hands-on demos, so don't hesitate to reach out after the event to set up a time to sync. So with that being said, Steve, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Lindsay, and thanks everybody out there who attended today. Really appreciate you guys making time for Qumulo. What I'm going to do is take about 5 minutes to introduce you to who Qumulo is, what we do, and why it's important. Then I'm going to turn it over to our team of experts, and that's the real magic. And you guys will get to see, what we do in action. My name's Steve Knoll. I'm a territory account manager for Federal. I've been with Qumulo for a long time and been with storage even longer. And I'm going to walk you guys through some of the basics and give you some information that you want to remember, because there will be a quiz after. So we'll go next slide. So what does Qumulo do? We are a storage company, but we're very specifically a file storage company. And that's important to remember, because file storage is one of the hardest things to manage out there. Those of us who manage data, manage storage, know that files are unpredictable. They're growing faster than ever. And everything we do today is stored in a file. So if you need proof of that, pick up your iPhone, look at your photos, look at your receipts. Everything is stored in file format. Now think about that in the public sector and in industry and in higher education, things like video surveillance, satellite data, genomic sequencing, research data, all stored in file format. And these files need to be processed, they need to be accessed, and they need to be protected at massive, massive scale. Next slide. The scale we're seeing today is unprecedented. It's causing a lot of nightmares for storage administrators. So you notice our very orange grumquat. He's our mascot on the right side there. And he's grumpy because the data is growing so fast, he can't keep up with it. The storage systems that were designed 15 to 20 years ago simply don't have the features, functionality, or scalability to keep up with the growth of file storage today. What's driving the growth is compliance, keeping data forever. The size of files are getting much, much bigger. So think about resolutions on cameras and things like that. And just the amount of bit data being produced in areas like research, which is very, very relevant this year. The workflows are hyperactive. They're all over the place. We don't know whether we need performance or capacity or streaming or random. And that's very, very frustrating for storage administrators. You need to have a file system that can handle everything. And how do I get to the public cloud? There's mandates out there in the public sector to get my data to public cloud platforms and take advantage of those native cloud features and functionality. How do I do that without disrupting the business and taking the risk out of my file environment? I'll go next slide. So there's plenty of choices out there for file storage today. Most of them are very, very old. So if you look at the top file vendors out there in the market, as far as install base, they're 15 to 20 years old. And 15 to 20 years ago, nobody was considering billions of files or hundreds of petabytes of data. So these file systems were built to store, hundreds of millions of files and maybe a few hundred terabytes. And they've tried to scale along the way, but they didn't have the advantages that Qumulo had, things like flash storage and cloud principles and virtualization, all these things that helped us build a software-based scalable file system. They run on proprietary hardware. If you run on proprietary hardware, you're bound to that hardware forever. And what that does is it limits your path to the cloud. So if I have to pick my hardware up and move it to a public cloud service, it doesn't really give me the benefits of those native public cloud services like high availability and cost models and economies of scale. And if you look at what's available in the public cloud today, cloud vendors are not file system experts. Qumulo is a file system expert. We understand things like multi-protocol access, how to encrypt our data, and how to give you efficient storage where you can use 100% of your usable capacity. We also, provide a file system that runs with native file protocols, which means you don't have to rewrite your applications to a new API and disrupt your business. We want to make it simple for you to set up, size, and forecast how much money you're going to spend. Some customers are very, very surprised when they get their first cloud bill because they didn't have the metrics they needed when their data was on site to understand how that cloud would impact them. Qumulo solves that problem. Next slide. So how do we solve the problem? Well, Qumulo is a software-based file system that runs three different ways. One is on commodity hardware that you can get from Qumulo or a Qumulo partner. The other is from OEM hardware, so from big OEMs like HP and Fujitsu, and also in the public cloud services. The reason we can do that is because we are a software-based solution. We run in Linux user space. We're not bound to any specific hardware configuration. We have a hardware compatibility list and a configuration compatibility list in the cloud that allows us to be flexible about how you deploy. We could also use 100% of provision capacity. So if you're a storage administrator today, you've been living in a world where you have to give up that last 15 to 20%. Qumulo intentionally built a file system that allows you to use 100% of all the capacity you provision. We have a multi-protocol file system, and it's very scalable. So multi-protocol file services at massive scale, where I can provide services to my NFS users, to my SMB users, Windows and Linux on the same file. And with these file workflows being unpredictable, I need to be able to do that in the public cloud as well. And we fully encrypt all the data at no extra cost. So this is really, really important. Qumulo is an all-inclusive software subscription, which means that any feature functionality within the file system is provided to you at no extra cost. We also have world-class partners. You can see them on the left side and on the right side. So our Qumulo's ability to run in software on all these platforms has given us a breadth of very, very high-profile partners. Next slide. And where has this kind of led us? If you look at Gartner, Qumulo's moved very, very fast into the leaders category, and completeness of vision is not surprising. Our founders are the pioneers of the scale out NAS industry. You can look up their bios. They're the guys who built these file systems before, and they know what they're doing. We have a lot of talent, but ability to execute is a direct result of building a software-based system that can run on partners' hardware and cloud platforms. So we're able to address the market in a different way than our hardware-based vendors who have to sell you their hardware. And that's very, very important when you're talking about economies of scale, consumption models, and ability to get to the public cloud. Next slide. We can go ahead and build this one out. So what we're going to show you today when you talk to our team of experts that are coming up is how you can consolidate your data. And that's getting your file data in your data center onto a platform that can support things like custom analytics, scalability, 100% of usable capacity, encrypted data with a full enterprise feature set. How you can extend that to the public cloud. So have the ability through Qumulo continuous replication to then move portions of your workflow, whether it's for DR, recovery, archive, or running them in production into public cloud services seamlessly, and then transform some of those workflows over to hybrid or public cloud services when you're ready. Next slide. What you guys are going to see in the next few minutes, in the next hour or so, is a demo of how we can do this. You're going to hear a talk from AWS of how Qumulo can run on their native file services. And you're going to talk to our VP of product, Ben Gittenstein, about how we're doing this for other customers today and how it's impacting the industry. So sit back and enjoy. I want to thank everybody for their attention today. And I hope you guys get a lot out of this. There will be a quiz at the end. And just remember that our Grumquat is very, very orange today.
Great. Thank you so much, Steve. So like Steve said, we are going to put your knowledge to the test here. We're going to be using Kahoot for this fun Qumulo quiz. For those of you who haven't played before, you can join in using a web browser on your mobile device or on a desktop. There's no need to install the app. Once there, enter in the number code on the screen and you'll be good to go. Keep in mind that your final score is based not only on your correct answers, but the speed of your responses. So good luck, and may the odds be ever in your favor. So we will give people a few minutes to join here, and then we'll get started. And as always, if anybody has any questions about joining the game, things like that, you can definitely ping us in the chat. Getting some good players here. Loving some of these names too. Very nice. Oh, that's a good one. Grumpy G. All right, we'll give it just a few more seconds here. I think we've got a good set of players here. All right, let's get started. So question 1. What color is the Qumulo Grumquat? Purple, pink, orange, or blue? You can select your answers now. And we got 10 seconds. Right, orange. Nice work. And we have Notorious in the lead so far. Excellent. All right, question number 2. Where can you install Qumulo software? The cloud, Qumulo hardware, OEM hardware, or D, all of the above? I should say green, all of the above. You guys can select your answers now. Correct. Nicely done. Grumpy G taking the lead. Let's move on to the next question. How much does Qumulo's encryption at rest cost? 10%, 20%, 42% additional, or nothing? It's free. Excellent. That is correct. Absolutely nothing. It is free. All right. Question 4. True or false? Qumulo is multi-protocol. Great job, everyone. All right, let's see. It's a tight race between the top 2 leaders here. Let's go to question 5. What percentage of usable data should be able to be used? 100%, 91%, 80%, or 50%? %. Great work, everyone. All right, here are our, we had a new placeholder come in at the last minute. Love it. So we have Grumpy G in 3rd, Nat in 2nd, and Notorious taking the win. Great job, everyone. Always love to see those correct answers come in. So really fun. Love seeing that. So congratulations to our top 3 winners. All right. So moving on, I want to give a very, very warm welcome to Brandon Middleton from AWS. Brandon, are you out there?
I am here. Can you hear me, Lindsay?
I can. Hey, thank you so much for joining us today. We would really love for the audience to hear directly from AWS about why Qumulo and AWS are better together. So if you're all set, I'll hand the mic over to you and we'll get going.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me, and just to level set and introduce myself. Hey, everybody, I'm Brandon Middleton, based here in the Bay Area, right outside of Oakland, California. And my day job is to help startup customers here in the Bay Area and all up and down the West Coast go on their cloud transformation and use AWS services in order to reach and achieve their business outcomes. So these are customers in all different areas, industries, sectors, and verticals. So it's a really exciting time actually to be here at AWS, to be out there in the kind of the business world. And coming out of the pandemic, we've got a lot of opportunity to do some things differently, and a lot of things to actually put our hands to, and cloud is going to be a big piece of how we do that. One last thing I'll say just in the intro is that, data surpassed oil, I think, last year in terms of being the most valuable asset in the world. So it's incumbent upon us at AWS and our ecosystem of partners to make sure that we are treating it as such, as a valuable resource, securing it, and helping our customers and their customers to do all the stuff that they would like to do with it in order to, again, achieve the goals that they've got. So yeah, outside of work, family man, got a couple kids that run me and my wife crazy, but been doing this thing in tech for about the last 15 years or so. So I was a software engineer and used to wear a pager and do a bunch of different things with infrastructure. So hardware, security firewalls, and wireless stuff at Cisco. Then I went to Microsoft, to a partner named Slalom Consulting before AWS, and then Amazon here. So really, really excited to talk again with you all. And to your question, Lindsay, I'll talk about why Qumulo and AWS are better together. So, I mentioned a bunch of the different verticals and industries that are doing stuff with cloud right now. And we realize and acknowledge that different companies are at different points in their cloud migration journey. So there's some that are coming from, decades and decades of on-prem and looking to go into kind of a hybrid fashion. There are some companies that are born in the cloud and are looking to just take advantage of a bunch of different services that are available, from AWS. But one thing they all have in common is kind of this substrate of storage and this substrate of lots of different diverse types of data that they're dealing with. So one thing that Qumulo and AWS do really, really well together, the product, as I've kicked the tires on it over these last couple of months, is really good at providing the granularity and the detail as to what's happening to many, many different types of folks who deal with data. So if we're talking about security administrators, to make sure folks have the right level of access to data. If we're talking about the devs and the software engineers who need to look into like the meta tags and the metadata in order to make sense of what scripts they're writing. If it's the system administrators who are dealing across multiple operating systems and giving folks access to different things, like Qumulo has a really, really good way of communicating and giving the value proposition to each of those different types of audiences. And that's really important to have kind of a single pane of glass where lots of different folks within your business can go to and have that consistency of experience and that quality product. So that's one of the things that I really, really like about the Qumulo AWS partnership, in addition to the shift feature inside of Qumulo, which allows folks who are using S3 to move stuff from on-prem into the cloud without having to do any data transformations. It's just there in the native S3 format so that you can save your devs time. There's no scripts that they have to write in order to prep the data and make it ready to go. It just works. So the shift feature is something that I'll point to that I also really, really like about Qumulo, the product. So hopefully that's a good overview of myself and a little bit of why Qumulo and AWS make a lot of sense together.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, you've definitely mentioned a lot of benefits. I would just love your perspective of like, at the end of the day, where do you think that Qumulo brings the most value to the customers? Would it be shift? Would it be, what do you think?
Yeah, from my perspective, in light of the fact that data is the most valuable resource in the world now, I think as human beings and workers, time is our most valuable resource. So when you think about how do I optimize the time that I have, especially like when folks are juggling, their children, and like this pandemic has made it very clear that we need to be as efficient with our time as possible in order to get stuff done on the work front and on the life front. So I would say Qumulo is really, really good at making each of those personas really efficient with the time that they give to the work that they're doing. So if it's a way to automate a process, if it's a better view that you get by default in the Qumulo product, as opposed to having to build a view or to go through many, many manual steps. If it's surfacing some data and giving it to you at the level of granularity that you need, instead of in the previous version of life, like a decade ago, having to take hours to drill down to the level of detail that you want. Each of the features inside of Qumulo, to me, save time and give human beings who are working the jobs the ability to do the most important thing and to prioritize the higher order things that their business should be focused on, and not the undifferentiated heavy lifting underneath, which is an abstraction that I think AWS is trying to provide, and that Qumulo also partners up with us and does a really, really good job at. So hopefully, you know, the short answer is, in light of data being the most valuable asset, I think the time that Qumulo gives back is one of the main things that is the biggest benefit in my view.
Yeah, absolutely. And you highlighted just how valuable time is. I couldn't agree more with that. Like with pandemic, kids, all of it. I hear you on that front. So absolutely. So you did touch on the simplicity of just moving file data dependent workloads to the cloud with Qumulo. Could you expand a little bit more on the services that they can access once they those workloads move to AWS?
Yeah, so once the workloads are sitting in AWS, for me, that's just step one. There's a lot of value in creating like a data lake or a data warehouse. And once the data is sitting there, there's so many different opportunities that you have, whether it be running AI and machine learning on it, like developing models and having them learn more and more as you put more data into it, you be more intelligent and kind of tuning algorithms. Or if it's just better analytics so that your line of business users can query the data and ask questions of it and get responses back more in a self-service fashion, and not have to throw it over to maybe the data science team or to the analytics team. A lot of the services that AWS is putting out to market focus on that analytics and that empowerment of the end user to get the answers to the questions that they have in real time, or as close to real time as possible. There's a bunch of compute services that could be leveraged once the data is in S3 or in a format where it can be taken advantage of. So I would say AI and ML and analytics are the two that I hear the most, but IoT use cases, there's so many different things that can be done once the data is actually sitting there in S3. So yeah, a bunch of folks coming from on-prem to hybrid, and some folks going from hybrid all in even into AWS, because who wants to pay for something that a company that's the scale of us is already like made really, really simple. So I think that folks are really, really focused on kind of taking advantage of these managed services and moving their staff kind of up the stack to focus on kind of the higher order challenges that their specific business is best suited to tackle.
100%. So I have to ask, do you have any last thoughts for our attendees today before we finish up?
Yeah, there's a couple of points that I wanted to make, and maybe we fast forward one slide and I'll talk a little bit about the Qumulo on AWS Gov Cloud, which is out right now. This is something that is specific to kind of public sector and government customers who have, you know, you see on the first line, the compliance regulations that they've got to comply with, and they've got maybe an added layer of security and sensitivity to just protecting and making sure that privacy is there. So this is something I really want to call out, especially for the audience of folks who are on the call today, whether you be kind of a security practitioner or a sysad or a software developer. I think the Qumulo on AWS Gov Cloud offering is something that's really, really worth checking out if you have time. And then the very last thing I want to talk about, if you forward one more slide, is just the AWS Marketplace. Qumulo's got some offerings that are there, and the Marketplace is essentially the app store for all of the different partner offerings that companies have put into that marketplace in order to make your life as an end customer easier, to that point about getting to the higher order things that your business is best suited to do. So feel free to check out the Qumulo AWS Marketplace listing as well. They've prepackaged their software into something that you can just download and run in your own AWS environment. And yeah, we're hoping that you build the coolest, most useful to society applications that we can take advantage of in this generation and in the one to come. And the thing that I always want to leave folks with is that AWS really strives to be the most customer-centric company in the world. So I really encourage you, if you have feedback about any of the services that we're offering or the products that you're seeing pop out, 85 to 90% of our roadmap is actually directly correlated to customer feedback that we've received. So feel free to reach out to your AWS account teams, to any specialists and folks who focus on the business areas, the industries, the technologies that you're focused on building out. And our door is always open for questions, for comments, and for feedback. So with that, Lindsay, thank you so much for the time. Thanks to the listeners for listening to us. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out at any time. You guys be safe, be well, and we'll talk soon.
Hey, Brandon, the pleasure was all mine. Seriously, I always love chatting with you. And for you, thank you so much for lending your time and sharing your expertise with us today. Excuse me. I sincerely speak for all of us when I say it was an absolute pleasure having you here today. So thanks again. Always wonderful.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
Of course. All right. So now that we've heard about Qumulo and AWS together, let's see it in action with a live demo. Dak, are you there?
I'm here, Lindsay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, can't wait to see what you have in store for us. So I will let you take the mic.
Yep, just jump to the next slide. So the demo we're going to show you today, I'll review the architecture quickly, then we will spin this all up with a CloudFormation template. I'll show you what that CloudFormation template is doing. We'll review the infrastructure it created, and then Keith will take you through the UI and a demo of these 100 clients hitting this cluster with a bunch of read-write traffic. So on the far right-hand side of this drawing, you see the cluster kind of center lower right, Qumulo core with some I'm sorry, that drawing is slightly out of date. This is actually using 10 C5N 9x large instances, not 4 M5 2x larges. That wouldn't deliver the throughput we're going to show you, but you will see, and we will show you in the UI, that it's 10 C5N 18x larges. Apologies. So some decent sized instances. With then a bunch of EBS behind those that's creating all of that infrastructure. It's all GP2 based, and it's 8 terabyte per node of capacity, so 80 terabyte raw. North of that is the Qumulo sidecar. These are 2 Lambda functions, one sending metrics to CloudWatch, the other is monitoring EBS volumes in case there's a failure. Failures of EBS volumes can happen. And since we create a large sea of EBS volumes, statistically, there's a higher likelihood. So if one fails, we automatically detect it and replace it. Connected to this cluster are 100 clients, 50 Linux and 50 Windows. So we are doing a multi-protocol test and workflow in this demo. You'll see them turned up simultaneously, and they're both hitting the same share. So there's an SMB share and an NFS export against the same directory. That's the kind of the highlights of what we're building in the demo. Let's just jump into the next slide. And we'll turn it up. So we dropped the name of our template in, pointing to our S3 bucket where the CFT sits, CloudFormation template. Give it a name. Give it the bucket name. In this case, it's my bucket. The prefix name, that's the folder it sits in the bucket. Give it a key pair name, which is standard AWS fare. Pick a VPC. We auto-populate these. Make sure that our security group for the cluster matches the CIDR of our VPC. That way the cluster can talk to both private and public subnets in the VPC. Pick a private subnet. We'll skip public management, but it is an option that we provide in this well-architected CloudFormation template. We do have to pick a public subnet just to make the template happy, the parser, even though we're not using public IPs to manage this cluster. Since we don't have an AD server, we're going to spin up a Route 53 private hosted zone with a FQDN of Qumulo.com. And we'll call this demo for the A records. We'll drop our AMI ID in from Marketplace. We'll pick C5N18 large, 10 instances, and 8 terabyte all flash, not ST1. We'll leave the name CloudQ with a nifty hyphen. And we will put a customer managed key in here. So the data at rest will be encrypted with a customer managed key, not an AWS default key. That looks good to go. Let's click next. And so the stacks are building. First is the secret stack. This is storing the sidecar username and password in Secrets Manager so that we can retrieve those securely and not expose them anywhere in our software stack. Also creating an IAM profile for the cluster. I didn't mention the floating IPs. You may have seen it in the template, but we're also creating 3 floating IPs per node. Those floating IPs allow us to have IP failover in the event that an EC2 instance fails. And then we are able to manage which nodes the IPs are placed on in the event that that EC2 instance fails. You see the Qumulo stack turning up. This is spinning up the 10 C5N18 large instances along with all the EBS volumes. So this is the heart of the cluster. And I'm trying to remember, we'll show you, I think it's, I want to say it's 15 EBS volumes per node. It's been a while since I looked at this exact disk config. Sidecar stack is turning up. This is, as I mentioned, the 2 Lambda functions, one sending metrics to Cloudwatch, the other monitoring the stack or the cluster, I should say, and its associated EBS volumes. In case there's an EBS failure, automatically replaces one of those, pulls every 10 minutes. Next is the provisioning stack. The provisioning stack is taking all of the associated information, the username and password we stored in Secrets Manager. It's retrieving that, programming that into the cluster along with a custom RBAC role, a username. It's also provisioning all the floating IPs that were set up in the Q stack as EC2 secondary IPs. It's setting those up as floating IPs on the cluster. And then last is the DNS stack and the Cloudwatch stack. DNS stack here is the Route 53 private hosted zone. So those floating IPs, 3 per node, 30 in total. Those are being set up in our Route 53 private hosted zone with a UNC path that all of the nodes our clients can mount, called demo.qumulo.local. Cloudwatch stack's creating a resource group for all the EBS volume tags that the provisioning node applied to make it easy to filter your view in Cloudwatch subsequently. So let's take a look at what's built. You see the 10 nodes of C5N18 large. You see the provisioning node has stopped. So it did its job and then it automatically shuts down. And let's take a look at the volumes. You can see that all the EBS volumes are tagged up with their volume type. These are GP2 volumes. You see there's a 160 in total here. So sorry, it was 16 per node. And you can also see that the key used for encryption at rest is that one EE key that we used and assigned in the template. So we're using a customer managed key for encryption at rest. You can see we created 4 IAM roles for the cluster and Lambda functions. And there's the secrets manager and the secrets that we stored for the sidecar. Here's the 2 Lambda functions. We'll take a look at the metrics Lambda just to show you quickly what that looks like. Click on monitor. And then we'll look in the top right corner there, that error count success rate, green light or green line at the top, red line at the bottom means 100% success. Lambda is talking to the cluster. Here's the Route 53 private hosted zone records that were created, 30 of them plus the NS and SOA for a total of 32 records. You can see that UNC path that the clients can subsequently reference, demo.qumulo.com. Here's the resource groups that were created, one for the cluster and one for EBS. We'll take a look first at the EC2 filtered group. So you can see the ENIs, and then the EBS, specifically SSD, GP2, and you can see there's 16 pages with 10 volumes per page. These are all tagged up, so they're easy to filter on subsequently. I'll turn it over to Keith, who will then take you through the UI and show you the traffic in action. Keith?
Thanks, Dak. So you can see I'm just logging into the cluster right now. And this is the dashboard that that you get as soon as you land in. The first thing I'm going to do is actually jump over to our network configuration page. This is to really show you the 10 node cluster. This is each node in the cluster. And you'll see that it's got a static address and then those 3 virtual addresses that Dak talked about. Each one of those can move if a node were to fail to any of the other nodes. When I click on this, you'll see those 16 drives that Dak just talked about, each of those being an SSD type of about 600 gigabytes, giving you that 8 terabytes of capacity per node. This is exactly as we configured part of the CloudFormation template. The other thing I want to come over here and show you is, part of the provisioning of this cluster was, as Dak said, to create users on it. And this is that sidecar user that we provisioned as part of the deployment. So this sidecar user is built to send the metrics over, and it's a local user configured on the cluster. And Dak said it got its own RBAC configuration. So if I come over to our roles management and I show you the sidecar user here, when I go to edit this, you'll see we've picked as part of that deployment for this user 4 specific functions that this role can do. And those 4 are clicked. And that is what this user is capable of actually seeing and gathering as part of the Qumulo cluster. Now let's come back over to the Qumulo dashboard here. This is our main dashboard. When you first log into a Qumulo cluster, you will see all of the activity on this cluster. And you'll notice this is a 10 node cluster and it is protected. We just built this, so there's not a lot of data obviously on here. But as Dak kind of showed you in the diagram, we're going to be spinning up a whole bunch of clients. So this main cluster activity is an aggregate of 24 hours worth of activity. Since this is a brand new cluster, what I'm going to do is zoom in on the last few seconds or minutes of this cluster. And what you're going to start to see is as we start attaching clients to the cluster, you're going to notice the IOPS, the throughput, and the latencies are all going to adjust. And it takes a little bit of time for those nodes to spin up, but you'll notice that we're starting to see throughput and IOPS really climb. So let's zoom in a little bit more. And what you'll start to see, and when we talk about real-time visibility, this is it. This is actually, every few seconds, the screen is going to adjust. But you'll notice now we're starting to do 16 gigabytes of write to this cluster spread out across 14,000 IOPS of write throughput and IOPS. So we have our clients up and running. So as we do this, what you'll see is we can scroll down on our dashboard here, and you'll notice that normally this is going to say over the last 24 hours, but since this cluster is brand new, it's showing you what's happening right now. And our write throughput is about 17 gigabytes per second. And you can see all of the different clients that are connected. You'll see 101 clients. There's 50 Windows, 50 Linux. I'm connected to the cluster over Windows to demo this. So you'll see 101 clients. And you see the distribution of clients across all of the different nodes of the system. You can see the most active clients in real time, and you can see how much throughput and they're currently doing. Most of that being write throughput because there's very little read activity. Obviously, you have to do a little bit of read in a directory to write. But the bulk of our activity is all writes. The last thing you'll see is trends. This will actually come back to in a little bit. Trends happens as the cluster gets filled up, but on the main dashboard over time, you would see capacity changes occurring. If you scroll back up to the top here, you'll see that our writes are very, as the clients come on, you'll see the little bit of peaks and valleys in this, but as writes finish up, you see them drone off, and then more writing starts. But you'll notice that we're still writing at a pretty good clip here. So this, as I said, is our main dashboard. And the main function of this is to give you like what's happening right now. But there's so much more visual analytics that you can see. Now, this is not a very pretty cluster to look at because it's brand new and we're writing into the Qumulo demo directory. But you can see that I come into our integrated analytics, and every time I click on a new directory, the left-hand menu changes. You can see all the files and folders, and I can see my top clients. This is giving you that 10,000-foot view of what's happening. But more importantly, I can show you where the hotspots are. So right now, because it's the only directory we're writing into, you can see 13 gigabytes of write throughput is currently going to that demo directory. And all of my IOPS are also in here. As you load a cluster up, this gets more interesting. You can start to see the hotspot. More importantly, I can see the clients. Especially as you start going into the cloud, you want to be able to understand what's happening, who's generating throughput, where your bottlenecks are. You're paying for all this CPU time. You want to be able to identify what's happening. And the visualization that we have here is great because it allows us to see each client by IP and how much IOPS and throughput they're doing. I can also reverse this and say by path, and I can now look and see which of my clients is reading and writing, or in this case, currently writing, and to what path they are writing to. Our analytics and visualization gets more robust the more you throw into this, but it's really nice to see how equally distributed all of our write throughput currently is at this time, as we have these 100 clients writing to the cluster. Now, you may be saying when I looked at the top, there was only 30 paths. That's because 30 clients are currently writing in. As you said before, they're kind of peaking and valleying as they go on and off of the cluster. You'll notice that as that screenshot or screen we're just on showed that the writes were kind of tailing off. You'll notice that as we back out, the writes are actually finishing up. And what we're going to do is all the writes are going to stop, and what we're going to do is go back and read all of that. Really important to kind of point out here is that we were doing both Windows and Linux clients, and they're reading and writing to the same directory. Qumulo handles multi-protocol, both NFS and SMB, to the same files and directories exceptionally well. It's very, very slick. There's no knobs to tune. We determine ACLs and POSIX permissions based on the initial write to the cluster, and then we basically translate whatever the written permission is into the other one that's being accessed, and it makes for a very easy to manage and easy to deploy system. So as you can see now, what we're about to do is, and I think I'm going to have to just kind of buffer a little bit of time here, but our reads are going to kick in because all of the writes have now flatlined, and you can see that there is no writing currently happening. And the real power of Qumulo comes from the read. All right, most workloads write something in once, and then there's reads and rereads. And Qumulo in the cloud is going to give you a very, very high performance, especially this cluster, amount of read, whether it be AI, ML workloads. A lot of our customers are in the media and entertainment space, and they need to do transcoding and rendering, or editorial workloads where they have to read a file in and edit it back. So all of our writes are now tailed off. And what we're going to do is we're going to spin up all the reads. And what you'll notice is the reads are going to kick in, and we were seeing about 17 gigabytes of write throughput. Well, we're going to have probably a lot more, pushing 20, 25 gigabytes worth of read. Also, to just kind of put a little bit of a button on, some of our customers specifically are doing genomic workloads in the cloud where those samples are written in, and now they have to do heavy analytics on genome sequencing, and their genome pipeline comes in and it reads all that data back. And now you can see the reads have really kicked in, and we immediately bump up to 23 gigabytes per second of read throughput across this 10 node system. And this isn't a very large system from a capacity perspective. You'll see it's only about 65 terabytes in size. And we're generating 24 terabytes of read throughput. So now that our reads are actually kicked off, I'm just going to scroll back down. Earlier, we showed the write throughput distribution. Now what you'll see is the read throughput distribution, because all of our reads there's no real writes, but there's a lot of reads. So you'll see that we're now currently doing about 24 gigabytes of read across the entire cluster. And this is happening over the last hour. Still have 100 clients. And you'll notice now that we're reflecting our top client is really in read and write, read IOPS and read throughput. Let's go back over to the top of the screen, and I'm going to go to the exact same view we just had, but we're going to click on the clients, and you're going to see they're all doing read now. Just to kind of show you that all of this happens in real time. We're seeing 27 clients, and I can expand the paths, and you can see that they're now reading back the files that we just wrote. This is a very high performing cluster that we just recently spun up in the last few minutes, and we're getting massive throughput, which gives you the ability to do bursting type workloads where you can ingest your data on-prem, move it up to a cloud cluster, take advantage of the power of the cloud, and process and transform that data, and then pull it back. Now, just looking at the same directory here, you can see all of the throughput is generated in read format. You can see by the candy stripe purple lines, and we're going to take a quick look at IOPS. Once again, our menus over here show you what's actually happening. Capacity Explorer, this is a kind of cool tool. It gives you the ability to dive in visually and see your files and folders, how big they are, really, really quick. This is the key to our no tree walks. And last thing I want to show, on the main dashboard you saw at the very bottom, your capacity trends. Well, we've had enough time on the cluster to start building out trends. And you can see all the growth on this cluster has come in here. And when I clicked on it, this bottom menu changed, and it showed all of the capacity adds were into the Qumulo demo directory. Last thing we're going to go is we're going to flip over to our AWS console again, and we're going to go to the Cloudwatch console. That sidecar Lambda functionality that we talked about, this actually feeds all of the data to the Cloudwatch console. And I can go into our EBS volumes, and I can look at all of the Qumulo demo clusters that we just provisioned at the SSD tier. And what's going to happen here is all of the telemetry information that is being sent from the Qumulo cluster, from that role, and all of that is being sent right over to Cloudwatch. And this is all what we just saw. So all of the read and the write IOPS that we had, you can see the spike, how it was all read. And that is a Qumulo demo for you in the cloud running in AWS. Going to hand it over to Lindsay so she can introduce Ben, our VP of product.
Thank you so much, Dak and Keith. Always love to see an amazing demo. That was fantastic. All right. And as Keith said, we have one of my favorite people here at Qumulo, Ben, our amazing VP of product, who is going to chat with all of you. So Ben, are you out there?
I am. Hi, everybody. How are you doing?
Excellent. Thanks so much for being here, Ben. The floor is yours. Take it away.
Okay, great. Why don't you go ahead and click one forward? So look, the focus of this, there's really 2 or 3 messages I want to make sure that everybody takes away from my little talk here, which is the first is moving to the cloud is a critical part of how all of us are running all of our organizations, how all of you are running all of your organizations. And there's lots of different reasons for that, whether it's collaboration, as you see here on this page, or cost, or geographic reach, or simply accessing the innovative new services that are available in the cloud. But moving to the cloud is more important than ever before. And it's our job at Qumulo to make that easy and risk-free for all of you. And we see that as central to our mission. So if you take nothing else away from what I talk about for the next couple of minutes, it's that our job is to make the journey to the cloud easy, simple, and risk-free. Why don't you go ahead one more slide? So at Qumulo, I think Lindsay mentioned this. I run product here, so I've been at Qumulo since pretty much we were in stealth, and so I've been here for a while. And our mission from the beginning has always been to make it simple and easy for customers like you to build and manage petabyte scale file lakes, both on premises in your data centers and in the public cloud. Full stop, that's what we do here. We make it really easy for you to put lots of data into one thing and then have all of your users who need to use that data, whether they're on a Windows machine, a Linux machine, a Mac, whether they're coming in over SMB, NFS, or REST, doesn't matter, all have real-time, great, high-performance access to that, but with the simplicity of an easy-to-manage system and at the economics that you expect, and to make that possible both in your data center and in the public cloud. That's what we do here. Everything we do from a product standpoint is built around that mission. Go ahead. When I talk to customers about the journey to the cloud, what I have found over and over again is really there's sort of 3 steps to this journey. Step 1 is to consolidate. And really that means get as much of your file data, your unstructured data into one system as you possibly can, because that makes it so much easier for your users to work together, to lower the cost of management, and to make it simple and easy, honestly, for you to just have one system to look at. Qumulo in particular, this is sort of like our starting point. We build great scale out systems that it's really easy to put lots of data in and to manage, and it's really easy to serve multiple users and use cases from. So that's a really simple, easy way to get started. And in getting started that way, to really get to know the Qumulo system as well as the Qumulo experience, get to know our customer success model, get to know our product teams, get to know your sales team, all of that really, and get to know the product itself and how it works. The second step in the journey is to extend it. Okay, so now you've got all your data in one place, most likely in your data center, and you want to now start to take advantage of the possibility of the public cloud. And you're not really for most customers in this phase, you're not really ready to jump with both feet into the public cloud. You're really saying, I've got a great data center strategy. I want to add some capabilities to that strategy with what the public cloud offers me. So that's what we call extend. How can I leverage the public cloud as an extension of my on-premises strategy? And a suggestion of the first way to get started with that is backup and recovery. Qumulo offers really robust replication and DR products and capabilities inside of our product. You can run our product natively in the public cloud, as you saw Dak and Keith demo, and that makes a great backup and DR target. And so it's really a really great way to get started with Extend is build out a public cloud Qumulo cluster or namespace, have that mirrored or peered to your on-premises cluster and replicate data back and forth. And then you can also use that as your DR target without having to spend CapEx resources on real estate and racks and whatnot. And then the third step of the journey is to transform. Okay, so now I am really ready to go with both feet into the public cloud. I'm ready to begin closing down my data centers or moving entire workloads and entire workforces into the public cloud. Now, by the way, I want to do this on my timetable when I'm ready. Great. Well, now you've already built public cloud resources that are backed by Qumulo as a file service. I can begin to cut my workloads over. If they work on-prem against Qumulo, they'll work in the public cloud against Qumulo. So when you are ready, you just seamlessly cut over and move. Okay, let's keep going. So the next couple of pages here, we're going to look at a couple of pictures to see what those phases of the journey could look like. So we'll start with consolidation. So this is a really common problem. It's something we've helped a lot of customers with. You've got, in the case of research data, you've got a variety of labs. Each one of those labs is run by very smart, well-meaning people, but they've built their own infrastructure to support their research efforts. That means you're paying a lot of CapEx for each one of those, for the storage that serves each one of those. You have a high you have a lot of redundancy. You're paying for servers to store the same data maybe 3 or 4 times. And you actually are making your labs less effective because they can't really collaborate across labs. The data is sort of stuck in a silo. Qumulo can make that a lot easier, both for you and for your researchers. So if you go a click forward, that's where consolidation comes in. Put all 4 of these labs onto one scale out Qumulo namespace. Have that namespace serve all 4 of these workflows or labs and all of their ancillary workflows. Because we're multi-protocol and scalable, and because we've got an intelligent cache, you can serve both the high performance needs of those workflows as well as the lower performance archive needs, and you can serve the genomic sequencer that's speaking SMB and the compute farm that's speaking NFS, and even coordinate and manage all of the various file system activities you need to do over REST. All of that works today, and I'd suggest that's a really great way to get started. Step 2 then is extending. So let's go there. So now you've consolidated all of your workflows into one scale out namespace on premises. It's time to get started experimenting with dipping a toe in the water, starting to put a foot into the public cloud. And a great way, as I mentioned before, a great way to get started there is replication. So have Keith, Dak, or somebody else on the team build you out a Qumulo namespace in AWS, begin replicating that data over from on-premises into the public cloud. And then you can use that as a safe DR target because it's in a totally different data center that's unconnected to anything you own on premises, or you can begin actually doing work up in the public cloud. One really important point to make about Qumulo systems is that the way we built our replication technology, any Qumulo system is a legitimate target or a valid target for replication from any other Qumulo system. So if you own Qumulo on all flash on premises made by one OEM or another, and you want to replicate to the public cloud, that will work just fine. If you would like to move from one public cloud to another, that will work just fine. All of that is supported by our product because any Qumulo system can move data to any other Qumulo system. You just need the security credentials to be able to authorize the data movement and the relationship. Okay, let's go one step forward. Now you've extended your data center footprint out into the public cloud. It's time to transform. So what does that mean? Well, ironically, what it means is breaking the relationship between your on-premises Qumulo and your cloud Qumulo. Of course, you don't have to do this. Of course, you can do it on your timetable. If you're not ready to do it, great. If you are ready to make the jump, fantastic. We're excited for you to do it however you'd like. But at this point, what you're really doing is you're saying all of those workflows, data pipelines, users, even the VDI infrastructure that backs them, I'm ready to move those into the public cloud. At that point, one of the great things about Qumulo is all of those experiences that Keith showed you before, they're the same experiences in the public cloud as on premises. So that dashboard that we were looking at, even setting up RBAC roles, all of those work the same on premises as they do in the public cloud. It's just what we run on that's different. In the public cloud, we're running on a bunch of cloud IaaS, and on premises, we're running on a server. So once you've made that standardization effort that you did in steps 1 and 2, the transformation effort is really much simpler and lower risk. And that means all it really means is taking all those applications, porting them as VMs up into the public cloud, moving users and their roles and their access points and all of that into the public cloud, and that all will work just fine. I think that's actually it for me. So is there even one more slide? Yeah, so that's it for me. I'll stop right there and just say I was really excited to talk to all of you. Thank you for including me. My email address is ben@Qumulo. So if you ever have questions and you want to talk to me about the product we built or why or would want to learn more, just feel free to reach out.
Hey, thank you so much, Ben. Always great to hear from you. So we have landed at my favorite part of Qonnect Gov, which is the testimonials from our customers. They are the lifeblood of Qumulo. And as Ben hit on, our goal from the beginning and still is, honestly, is to make data management simple and easy. And our customers are the main drive behind our innovation and improvements. So with that being said, let's all give a warm welcome to Eric from the University of Florida. Hey, thank you so much for being here today, Eric.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And I don't know about anybody else, but every time I hear this kind of stuff of moving data to the cloud and using these Cumulo services, it always gets me to thinking, what can I do in that realm, and how do I get stuff to the cloud? And it's just neat to look at and see how well they've put themselves in AWS and made this so really easy. And I'm going to try to touch on a little bit of that here. But anyway, my name is Eric Tomio. I'm a systems administrator at the University of Florida in the research computing department. Next slide. So just give you a little bit of information on some of the stuff that we've got going on here. We're considered a research university, and we can look by the numbers that we're nearing almost $1 billion in research expenses or expenditures that comes from grant money, different various grants that researchers apply for and they spend at our facility. There's over 11,000 active projects now. We have thousands of faculty that are receiving rewards, and even startups are getting launched out of our research environments. In last year, at the end of last year, at the U.S. News and World Report, they had ranked us at number 6 in the top public schools, and you'll hear a lot of times from university staff that we're on the rise to 5. And one way that we feel we could probably get there, and we'll find out later this year, I suspect, is the latest announcement with our partnership with Nvidia. It's a $70 million AI partnership that just was formed. There's a link there. If you follow the link at the bottom, there's a lot more information on how that partnership came about. There's actually a really good video there too from the University of Florida individuals. It's a really great video. I suggest checking it out. Next slide. So we started kind of just as a hypergator, all compute, open computing environment. But over the years, as you've seen, we started to add artificial intelligence, which will be it's an Nvidia DGX SuperPod cluster. And we also have another environment, what we call Hypergator Research Vault, RV, which really is a software security layer built by a university innovation hub group that really puts a security layer on top of our clustered hardware, and it's completely isolated and very highly secure. So we also have added this year quite a few cores. AMD cores were our latest Hypergator rendition. We call it phase 3 of our Hypergator environment. We're pushing probably 80,000 cores now. And then with the Hypergator AI edition, we're now up to about 1,800 GPUs. Also with the Hypergator, we have about 1,800 nodes. We're looking to expand our Lustre environment even further. We'll probably be up over 10 petabytes by the end of this year on our Lustre storage. We're supporting over 3,600 users and 1,500 applications. Now those are where Qumulo fits in. Our Qumulo system is used for our home system and our applications. Next slide. So what were our NAS needs when we took a look a couple years ago to replace some of our NFS file systems that we had? Obviously, the number one thing we wanted was scale out performance or scale out. And Qumulo definitely hit that mark. And there were a couple other vendors, of course, I think we all know who they are, but that was just a need. And the second need was a high performance. Of course, Qumulo delivers there as well. And another option that we needed to look at, because again, it's something we had in our previous file systems, was quotas. Obviously, we want to make sure that our users aren't kind of running away with data, because whatever you give them, they're going to fill up. It's just the way it is. But Qumulo delivered on quotas. Snapshots were also needed. It was another service that we were offering previously. People became dependent on those kind of things. And Qumulo obviously has those, and it makes it easy for the users to go ahead and go into their own snapshots, decreasing support burden on, hey, I need to get data back. They can do it themselves. And low maintenance, obviously we want something that was hands off. For as much stuff as we have, we're a relatively small shop. So anything that, if we can spend less time maintaining it, we're all ears. And Qumulo has hit the mark on that one as well. Next slide. Some of the key features that Qumulo has delivered for us, and as I think Dak and Keith were discussing and showing, those analytics and even the Capacity Explorer, those tools are really invaluable. Those two alone, those were things that we saw from a demo perspective and that kind of thing before we purchased. Those alone were almost enough to set us apart, set Qumulo apart from other vendors that we were looking at. And the other two features that we were looking at, obviously upgradeability. What does it take to upgrade this thing? We had some issues with our previous one, and we were hoping to fix that issue. And then support. We tend to kind of support ourselves on a lot of our systems here, but this was one area again where we've heard a lot of great things about support, so we figured let's jump in, and these have really been some of the key features with Qumulo. Next. So as like I said, Dak and Keith showed you much better interactive use of the analytics dashboard, but we use this quite frequently. We get requests in our Slack channel of, hey, some people are complaining this stuff is slow. Can we see what's going on in the cluster? And I used to just say, I'll get back to you later, because it was not something that we could really do easily. But now I can say, okay, give me literally 1 minute and I'll let you know if the cluster is busy. So this main page of the dashboard here has been super handy for us just to go here. We can take a look and say, okay, there's an IOP spike around, whatever, 2:30 or something like that. Or we can see that there's been a consistent high load, consistent high read or write throughput. So maybe somebody's doing something on the cluster that they shouldn't be, or maybe it's just general workflow that is consuming many resources. Next slide. So when we get those kind of requests and we can see something, that's again where the drilling down the activity by the client or the path is incredibly useful for us. Again, it was the same thing before, where not only do we know there is a problem, but how do we identify where it's coming from? So this feature alone has allowed us to identify the node that it's coming from. And once we have the node and we can tell the path, we can easily hop on that node, take a look at whatever jobs that Slurm had submit to the cluster, and we can track down the user pretty quickly, quicker than we ever used to be able to do before. Next slide. As mentioned before too, Capacity Explorer has been incredible. It was really helpful when we migrated, but it's still helpful now. It helps us to identify, like this is the home area, obviously redacted all of our usernames, but you can kind of see who the top users are, which I'll be honest, they're most of our sysadmin staff, the ones that can't possibly fit under a 40 gig quota that we have for other users. So we have those set, but you can see here, you just look quickly who is at the top of the list, and then you can even drill down further to see, what's in here. Is the data that's in this directory, the temporary files or the core files, things from an HPC cluster that can sometimes add up, and users may not even really know. So that's another handy utility. Next slide. So I mentioned our previous upgrade process. It was kind of a, hey, there's a new release. Do we want to update this? Do we want to go through the pain and suffering of what it takes to upgrade our file system? And inevitably on our previous ones, something went wrong afterwards, almost every time. So we're obviously nervous around the first upgrade on this system, but I'll tell you, once we entered the path, we had our T's crossed and I's dotted, and we figured, let's just go for it. We were, had all hands kind of see what would happen, and literally entered the path, clicked the upgrade button. A few minutes later, the system came back, said it's done. Our pings barely dropped. Our data connections barely dropped. I mean, we're like, wow, that was actually really easy. So we've been pretty consistent on maintaining the quarterly update path anyway, to where it's now really not a big deal to actually just to go through the update. Next slide. And then of course, last but not least, the support from this thing has been fantastic. I, again, can't say enough about it. I'll give you two examples. This one here, obviously the Slack channel, been incredibly helpful. I don't like to pick up the phone. I don't know about anybody else, but I used to have to call into call centers, and you'd get routed through people. You get tier 1 and ask you if you've rebooted or unplugged and reconnected. And it's like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. So to be able to hop into a Slack channel has been great. This example here, actually, I did an upgrade after setting up our LDAP environment, and there's some things I didn't know. So I said, at here, help. And literally within a minute, I got a response back from someone said, hey, looking to help you, what's going on? And within 4 minutes, these guys were already on my system through the VPN, taking a look at what the problem was. And I think this specific issue is, I thought it was a complete disaster. Turned out to be something quite simple, and they were able to get me back up and running in a very short order. So this kind of stuff has been awesome. Another example, we have started using Samba Services, or SMB protocol. We used to just be only NFS, but we've shifted some of our Windows users to using SMB from here. And we had some issues at the beginning getting it working, mostly based on how our LDAP and AD, Active Directory, were set up. But we worked with the guys at Qumulo, and they were actually able to get us a patch to get us up and running. And we've been running on that for at least 6 months, maybe a little longer now. And it's been solid. It actually, I think, maybe works better than the old Samba Services setup that we used to have. So again, can't say enough about support. Next slide. I was gonna say, I think that actually wraps up all I had for today.
Excellent. And if anybody has questions, feel free to add that to the chat. But I have to say, Eric, thank you so much for being here today, taking the time to do so, sharing your experiences, whether it's the upgrade, the Slack conversations, all of it. It's absolutely invaluable to hear that firsthand account. So again, we sincerely appreciate you taking the time.
Not a problem. Yeah, actually, we've since we're working with Nvidia now a lot with this partnership, we have actually told them that they should consider getting a Slack channel. So they might be reaching out to you to figure out how you guys have set up Cumulo Care, because they're very interested. And again, we, with these kind of relationships, this piece is really, really important.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love it. So, all right. And I'm trying to see if we had any questions come through, and yeah, we're not seeing any come in, but again, Eric, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for being one of our beloved customers. Always hear good things. And so, yes, thanks again.
Really thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. So to conclude Qonnect Gov, we're going to be testing your knowledge on today's event by playing another round of Kahoot. As a reminder, join in using a web browser on your mobile device or desktop. You don't need to worry about that app. And once there, enter the number code on the screen and you'll be all set. So we'll give it another couple seconds for people to join before we get the ball rolling. I'll be curious to see if we have the same top 3 again and how close the race is this time around. So yeah, we'll give it a few minutes for people to join here. Okay, we got people. There you go. I'm looking for our top 3 winners to rejoin. Let's see. I'll hop in on the fun again. There we go. Excellent. Okay, give it a few more seconds and then we'll get started. And I love to see those questions coming in. Not quite sure if Eric is still on, but if anything, we can definitely forward those along and see if we can get those answered for you. So there's Grumpy G. Excellent. Okay, well, let's get started. First question is, what does the sidecar functionality do for Qumulo? Allows monitoring and alerting, adds a user to the cluster, allows you to ride shotgun with the administration of the cluster, or brings the cluster online. right, it allows monitoring and alerting metrics to be sent from the cloud. And so let's see who our leader is. Got ET in the lead. We'll move on to question 2 here. What type of a deployment tools were used to natively automate the Qumulo cluster in AWS? CloudFormation templates, your hands and feet, AWS console, or Terraform? And CloudFormation templates, great. And question 3, what type of protocol access does Qumulo support? HTTP, NFS, SMB, or NFS and SMB? Select your answers now. Great job, that is correct. All right, ET still in the lead here. And if you wanted to see which client was consuming the most amount of resources in a cluster, where would you look? The client analytics page, the integrated analytics, the Qumulo dashboard, or the Cloudwatch Console? It is the client analytics page. All right, so third goes to Nikki. Second, NP, and our top winner, ET. Excellent job, everyone. Love that participation. All right. So we've come to the close of Qonnect Gov. On behalf of everyone here at Qumulo, even the Grumquats, thank you so much for joining us today. We really hope you enjoy the program. Don't forget to reach out to your local Qumulo team for a live demo or a follow-up session. I've said it before and I'll say it again. We always love to hear from you. And if you don't know your local team, don't fret. Just send an email to info@qumulo.com and we'll get you squared away. So this is Lindsay Winthrop signing off from Seattle. Thank you again for attending Qonnect Gov and be well.